Welcome to Big Little Stories. I'm Ivy Sharmetz. My guest today is an entrepreneur who saw the power of influencer marketing long before it became a cornerstone of modern advertising, long before it was even a word that we all used. More than a decade ago, Sherri Langburt helped pioneer a new way for brands to connect with audiences by building authentic partnerships with creators online. Today, as CEO of BabbleBoxx, she leads campaigns that bring together brands and influencers in creative collaborations designed to spark real engagement and measurable growth. She's also a fabulous human being. Sherri, I'm so glad that you're here. I thank you so much for being here. First of all, I want to say happy 10th anniversary to BabbleBoxx. That is no small feat. So congratulations on that. People throw around the word pioneer. It sort of has a very loose definition these days. But when I say you are a pioneer, you are a pioneer. So talk to me about where when you realized that this type of marketing was the thing to focus on. And I know there was a company before BabbleBoxx that kind of gave you this idea.
Yes. So I'm going to age myself. So thank you for having me
Of
on your
course.
show. You're one of my most favorite people, and I
Uh,
watched far. I worked back in the day at Weight Watchers. So I am going back to 2001, 2002, 2003 when we started. Oh, there's mommy bloggers. We should get them to talk about Weight Watchers because they have followers. And it was there that I was like, I love this. And so I was like, I'm going to launch a blog and quickly then realized that it's not so easy to monetize. And I was more of a business person than figuring out all the stuff to be create. Like I could write, but I couldn't like the cameras and the editing and the SEO. And so I flipped and I flipped the model and I just started to like help influencers back in the day. So we started really with influencer marketing in 2010,
And that was
but my company
blogs meets brand, blog meets brand. Was that
it was really called Single Edition. So my
okay?
one blog was turned into Blog Meets Brand, turned into BattleBox.
Okay.
So it's been a whole yeah.
What do you remember the first time? And you mentioned Weight Watchers, but do you remember the first time that you experienced an influencer campaign and you were like, "Oh wow, wait a minute, this is this is like legit the next thing that's happening in marketing."
I remember trying to get brands to talk to me
Mm,
and I one blog and then when went to start telling them, "Oh, now I have 200, 300, 400, 500 bloggers back then."
yeah.
The first brand that really came to us was Jeep, the car company,
Oh
and that
wow.
was I always tell my team, it was Friday of Memorial Day weekend at 5 o'clock, and they were like, "We need you to get this started right away," and that was when I was like, "Okay, now I know that it's not the one necessarily, but if I all of a sudden had 50, 100, 500, 1,000 influencers, creators, bloggers, you could give them inventory and work with different types of audiences," and that was the first real one.
So I mentioned that the even just the word influencer or creator or whatever we're calling it is relatively new, and we certainly didn't grow up with those words, and thinking it at least used in this way. For people who don't know, can you explain how this process actually works? I mean, what you do is you pair influencers with brands, but what does that process look like?
So we work on the brand side, right?
Okay.
We help the brands come up with strategies if they don't have them, what types of influencers, what size of influencers, all different sizes, which platforms make the most sense. Like Instagram might make sense for someone or TikTok for someone, but Facebook might be great or Pinterest or
Mhm.
YouTube. So we're coming up with all of the strategy behind that. How many influencers? What's the cadence of the campaign? And once we have the strategy, then we figure out like more the solution, right? Because there's different types of solutions, right? It could be a burst campaign, which is just one and done. It could be an always on campaign where you have influencers every month or different seasons. We could do storytile campaigns, which are great bursts for an awareness or a sale. We do our boxes. So then we come up with the themes. And then once we know the types of influencers, the number of influencers, the solution, then we go find the influencers and match.
Was it? You mentioned Jeep, but was it difficult just in general? How did you initially sell this idea to brands?
I pulled such like thousands of people who all laughed at me. And I just kept plugging, writing and writing people. And then finally, when it was just one blog, because this didn't really exist, they just, oh, thanks so much. No, thank you. But when I was able to then say, well, now I have, because I realized if I had different other pieces of inventory and
Sure.
different types of so then all of a sudden I had thousands, and this is before there were SaaS platforms and before all this technology. And so all of a sudden I had like 3,000 influencers, bloggers, 4,000, 5,000, me in a spreadsheet. And then they were like, wait a minute, you could get me 300 moms, you could get me 300 fitness influencers. And that's kind of when they started to, when I had a massive inventory.
But I'm curious about how you kept the belief that this was something that was going to work, even though it may have been a little bit challenging at first, because that is such a key. And when something that I want to talk to you about later is you talk about women-owned businesses and how difficult it is for them to be successful. Here you are at the beginning of something that you very strongly believe in, rightfully so, right? You've proven yourself correct over and over and over again. But at the beginning, if there was doubt and you it was really up to you to maintain your sense and your confidence in this idea and your ability to know that this is something that's going to work. I just have to get it to latch on. How do you survive that period of time?
When I was doing it, I was like pregnant
Okay.
and it was really hard, and there were I'm not gonna lie, I mean, people I think look at the internet like, "Oh, that person made millions of dollars overnight." It's a journey, and I just kept I had an uncle, and he would say, "If you can't get in through the door, go through the window, and if you can't get in through the window, go through." And I just kept trying to think of different ways to pitch it and get in the door. And I'm not gonna lie, it was very hard. There were years that, were really, really hard, but I just kept I think there's just something in me that knows when something is right, and I think to the next point is I think most entrepreneurs quit before,
Yeah.
they just don't have that.
So we're going to talk about this later, but let's talk about it now because I love your LinkedIn page. Y- If if someone gets anything out of this conversation, it's they should be following you on LinkedIn because you have such amazing wisdom and you share such great insight. And on a recent post, you said that 88% of women-owned businesses. I was shocked when I read this. 88% of women-owned businesses generate under 100,000 in revenue. And and this is to me like so powerful. You say the challenge isn't just helping women start businesses, it's making sure their potential isn't underestimated along the way. So the question we should be asking, who around you might be capable of more than the world expects and how can you help open the door? Like the framing of that, the world we can do more than the world expects of us. Where does and you also I have to say also shouted out your grandma Esther who taught you everything you say. But what does that feel like though to now be in a position and look back and say you did more than the world expected of you?
I think the stats are crazy because even when you look at what 88% are earning, there's like 4% who ever make it past $1,000,000. So, and I have never been the person to go raise money. I believe in just keep putting the money back in and doing it the old fashioned way. But that's probably even less, right? Female funded businesses are probably even less. What I look back to is when I started, and even the women around me who were in positions, friends, colleagues that could have opened the door, laughed. And so now any single person who reaches out to me, I will do whatever I can to help. If it's a college kid that they need, and I don't see people doing that so often. Recently I reached out to someone from my past and he was like, go through my whole LinkedIn and go through this. And if there's and I don't know if it's like you get to a certain point where you just want to help others, but when you're younger, you're just all competing. Like, I don't know what it is, but I think that we all have to just be helping one another
Yeah.
rise.
Yeah. And also, I like to say too that sometimes we borrow confidence before we own it. And the people that we borrow that confidence from have to be the people that believe in us enough to get us through the hard times because we all have them,
Yeah.
especially when we're trying to start a business and in your case, create a whole new space.
Right. Right.
So, all right, we're going to take a very quick break. And when we come back, I want to talk about everyone thinks they know what an influencer is and what influencer marketing is about, but I want to talk about what really sticks, what makes it work, and kind of get your very insightful take on all that. So we have more with Sherri. We'll be right back. So Sherri, everyone with a social media account at some point has thought maybe they're an influencer. Certainly, some of the things that they post, they are trying to be influencers.
Right.
I have heard you say that influence being an influencer is not just about the number of followers you have, there's other variables. So how do you define an influencer or a creator or, whatever the term is?
I think that it starts with really someone who there's 2 different types, but the way that I look at it, not the TikTok affiliate seller type of creator, more of the content creator. I think it's like you look at their connection to their audience. Um, and again, a connection could be misleading because if you see someone post about insurance and everyone's commenting, "I love your hair," that's the wrong connection, right? So I think you really have to dig through the comments and people look at the vanity metrics like the likes, but the shares and the saves, like saves are like intent to go back. I love this person. I need to go back and look at that recipe, or I want to go back and buy what that person told me. And the shares are the viral nature. Like people actually looked at this piece of content and shared it. Um, I think, the quality of their content is important. um, Again, we're changing now, so the highly aesthetic and perfect is changing with the times, and we want more raw and gritty, and that's fine, but it's still, like, you need to look at the quality of their content, and I think that it depends on the niche and the audience, right? You could have 2 moms who everything like to like looks the same, but it really comes it's that can be a little bit more subjective to who you are and what you prefer.
Yeah, and it's really about storytelling too, right? It's not the traditional product placement. I like this because this. It's about envisioning your life with that product, I guess, or life with that brand.
And that's where you see what's happening on TikTok now is like, I don't know if you're seeing like everyone like, oh, you could do crazy things with creators and they work for free, but it's not storytelling. It's like affiliate from like 1999 and 2000 where people would just share links has come back. So you have thousands of people just shared a quick video, try this. It's not the same. Um, I think that the quality of what I see of content that is out there was millions of such talent, like, it's unbelievable, and even down to, like, such specific niches that you're it's, like, mind-blowing what is out there.
And you don't need 10 million followers to be a very impactful, engaging influencer, right? It's about the engagement.
It's about the engagement, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen campaigns where it's celebrities and they don't perform as well as, you could take one celebrity who has 4,000,000 and, 20 who each have a 100,000 or whatever, 200,000. When you use the 20, they're more closer to their audience, they're more real, and then you get 20 different pieces of content, 20 different audiences, so there's different trade-offs, when you go bigger and more celebrity focused or mega influencer versus, the smaller ones who have a connection with their audience.
Yeah, and we are talking about shares, which I know is a highly valued piece of social media content. Um, what have you figured out the formula for what makes something go viral?
Hmm. Well, viral really depends, right? We have campaigns going viral sometimes I think on TikTok, it's random, and then I think that on other channels, it's they know how to feed into their audience, and they you know what I mean? They're doing something with a unique hook, angle, location, and they know what's gonna resonate with their audience, and once their audience loves it, then it just goes viral from there.
Yeah. And you mentioned authenticity and rawness. I think sometimes this is my take. I come from, a world of TV where authenticity can be dangerous, but there is, I think, a fine line between raw and authentic and sloppy and chaotic and disorganized. How do you determine or define the line between authentic, raw, and what is this?
Yeah, that's like, we're vetting our influencers constantly, and we look at every single piece of content. We go back for weeks in their content. We have AI look at their content. So I think people think this is super easy. We're just selecting. We look at the client criteria of what it is and what they're looking for. Um, and it's really just doing the due diligence. If something doesn't look professionally raw, then you kind of know
Yeah,
it's messy. And it's kind of the same as, like, my house, like, if I surface clean or if I really clean type of thing.
exactly. You mentioned AI, which is interesting because I've been reading a lot of stuff about um, about AI, specifically about Chat GPT, the way people are using and how Chat is actually becoming the next influencer because the way we're asking, instead of we used to Google, now we're putting it into Chat and based on how Chat responds is how we act. How do you see AI integrating into the world of influencer marketing?
I think we have to be really careful. I love AI. I actually just did a post the other day that I clicked on something, or my friend was telling me about this new micro needling tool. And again, I got 40 different ads within Instagram while doing research of 40 different women, and it was AI. And it was clear that it was AI. There was typos, there was messy. So I think for influencers, I think that it's helpful as a tool. And I think for brands or agencies, there's definitely applications. Can it streamline workflow? Can you automate certain processes? But at the end of the day, it's the same thing that happened with the platforms, like the SaaS platforms. They're a tool, but influencer is still very human based, right? There's two stakeholders, the brands and the creators. And it's not like one and done like a job board where you post a job and someone applies and that's it. This is like we need to work through the creative, you need to review the drafts, and it's very human led. And I think that if we lose touch of that, there's mistakes that are going to be made.
Are there influencers that you point to and say this is someone who understands what the task is? I think of someone like Bethany Frankel who, does those, of course, right? But who is able to integrate the products in a way that does feel authentic. It does feel raw. Back to what you were saying, it still feels a little polished. It's polished raw. It's not
He's just so funny.
yeah,
Like, she has haters. I love her because I think she's just she I would never have the guts to do anything that she's doing, and she is very raw, but I think she can get away with it because she kinda is famous.
right.
Like, I could not go on camera and just start talking like that, like, if but she can because she's famous.
So if someone is listening to this or they're watching this and they say, I've always wanted to become an influencer. I've always just wanted that life. What do you tell them?
I would say that pick a very specific niche. Even, like, we do tons of work in New Jersey. And, like, you could just be a New Jersey influencer, right? We had one that was truck drivers. Like, I would say, pick your lane that is so specific to your niche. Because if you're passionate about it, I mean, there's basket weaver influencers, like, there's every
Wow.
kind of influencer, and within that niche, you will grow, and then, obviously, I would say, like, learn the technology. like
Yeah.
the editing, the filming, all that, because that's the most important,
How do
understanding that.
how do you think this field of influencer marketing has affected marketing in general? Just, there is still traditional marketing, but what has influencer marketing done to more traditional methods?
So when I used to call agencies, they didn't even know what influencer marketing was, and now, like, companies have teams and teams, and the
Yeah.
budgets have completely shifted, and now the big thing is influencer is in every it's not just influencers over here to share a message. We could use influencers for PR, we could use it the biggest thing we've seen is influencers in retail. Let's show the influencer in the store buying the product. It's omni, it's shopper, it's retail, it's everything, so and I've been saying it from the beginning, like, you could use a person to do anything, and that's what I've seen, and then also industries that you would never think like, this morning, I had 2 government calls. We do a ton of government work. No one thinks about government and tons.
Really? That's so interesting.
Buckle up, wear seatbelts,
Okay. Okay. Agencies, yeah.
you
Wow.
like, lotto is government,
Yeah, that's
there's
right.
tons of government work. Insurance.
What is the you're a pioneer, so now pioneer this. What is the what do you think is the next big trend that we should be thinking about or looking forward, or how do you see this evolving?
I think I think people miss the and it's not it's so many things, but the physical, the tactile, the
Mm,
AI is affecting the it's like the post-COVID, which is years later, but I think you're gonna see more influencers, the physical is gonna come back, like
mm.
more events, more, meetings with influencers, small intimate gatherings, physical products, and anything that brings us back to something that you could hold and touch. Like we do a ton of merch for brands, right? Because we do the kits. And so anything physical, that's what I think is gonna be big. So influencers launching their own products, brands sending products.
Yeah. I mentioned your LinkedIn, so people follow you, and the website for BabbleBoxx is BabbleBoxx with 2 X's.com. Um, Sherry, we end each of these conversations with something we call 3 big little questions. We do them rapid fire. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All
I
right, the first
will
one,
too.
how do you get yourself out of a bad mood?
I talk to myself.
Aw. What is your well, I paused for a second because I've heard you talk about your son in the past, and it's just you're just such a in addition to everything else you do, you're such a wonderful, loving, kind mother. What is your go-to karaoke song?
Harry, I can't sing. I don't know. Probably some like Barbara Streisand. I don't know.
You can't
Or
sing and
like,
you pick a Barbara Streisand song? That's
I don't know.
that's the worst. That's
Or
the
probably
worst.
Don't
It's the
Stop
hardest song
Believing
to
by
sing.
Don't Stop Believing by
But
don't that's
by Journey,
yeah.
okay. And what is your, favorite spot in New Jersey?
Like any lake. I'm always on a lake in the summer. All there's so many lakes. No one goes kayaking, and they're empty.
Sherry Langburt, BabbleBoxx.com. Thank you so much. I have known you for so long. I've been wanting to have this conversation with you for a long time. You're someone I admire, and I just enjoy any time I get to spend time with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that will do it for today's Big Little Stories. Be sure to check us out on Instagram at Big Little Story Show. I'm Ivy Sharmetz. I'll talk to you next time.